We talk a little bit more about this with Zwelinzima Vavi. He's the Secretary General of the South African Federation of Trade Unions, SAFTU. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Vavi. So, are you disappointed? No doubt you are, given in the past couple of weeks we've been speaking about the rising cost of living, the lack of cushioning or buffer, given the fact that employers are refusing to come to the table, even if it's just at inflation rate increase in terms of wages.
Absolutely, we are extremely disappointed. In fact, we are outrightly condemning the decision of the national policy that seeks to target inflation targeting above ensuring that we drive down the extraordinary high levels of unemployment, poverty, inequalities in our economy. We think that this policy approach is counterproductive, and it is designed for countries in Europe that are on the other side of the hill, but certainly will never ever work for countries that have massive developmental backlogs, such as that of South Africa, where we still have to be introduced to the first industrial revolution, where most of our people in the rural areas still have no roads, no running water, no housing, no infrastructure, no tax base for local government, no massive industrialization. In fact, we're seeing massive deindustrialization in South Africa. This policy is good news for those that perhaps the 10% of the population that commands the wealth of that equals to more than 90% of the country's population. Well, they can save, they have billions and trillions in their bank accounts, but the 90% of the population cannot cope, as you say in your introduction. And they're not only seeing a rise of interest rates now going back to the pre-COVID period, but they also see the massive increases in the food prices, in the transport prices, and in electricity, and in petrol, diesel, paraffin, you name them all. And this rampant inflation price increases, they say, of 7.5% is a total exaggeration in our view. I've never seen a country that wants to obsess itself with a 3 to 6% inflation and think that that's actually the main enemy.
So, Mr. Vavi, I actually wanted to talk about that because the Reserve Bank governor spoke about the high inflation rate and the withdrawal of stimulus from the United States. We ourselves were criticized greatly for a lack of stimulus package during COVID-19. But the Reserve Bank governor points to the policy setting in developed countries, developed or advanced economies, saying that they are accommodative. You point to the issue of the inflation target range. Should we be seriously re-looking at our monetary and fiscal policy, given the fact that, you know, we're not comparing apples with apples here?
Absolutely. Our inflation policy and monetary policies in general are pro-rich, and they favor the moneyed class in society, but they absolutely anti-poor. And I'm saying this not because unions or we in the left would have liked to see a runaway inflation which is out of hand, because lots of people who criticize us always want to blackmail us into saying that we want inflation of equal to that of Zimbabwe. No, that's not what we are saying. Inflation, of course, must be checked all the time, because inflation, when it is out of hand, can end up making life difficult for even the poor. But what is the balance here? The point that I was trying to make is this, that here is a country with a 46% unemployment rate, with 76% of its youth below the age of 24, with 53% unemployment rate for its Black African women, and with 2 of its provinces with unemployment rate of 55%, and with 8 out of its 9 provinces having an unemployment rate above 40%. That's a crisis. That's the #1 crisis economically. I'm not even going to speak about the fact that we are the most unequal society in the world, and not at all. Let's just focus on the crisis. The principal crisis in South Africa is that of unemployment. How dare do you not do everything that you can, from your fiscal to monetary policies, to prioritize that crisis of unemployment?
What should the MPC be doing, Mr. Vavi? Because, I mean, I see here the MPC notes the fact that public sector investment has strengthened, but it criticizes weak private sector investment has strengthened, public sector investment has weakened, but it also says household spending remains supportive of growth. But as time goes on, we will be unable to afford even the basic needs.
Well, we don't know which country they're really living in. In the country we live in, the rates of both private and public sector investments have plummeted to new lows. And this is what is causing a crisis of growth, that we are trapping ourselves in a low growth path. In fact, we were in a recession before we were hit by the COVID crisis. That's the real story that the NPC doesn't want to relate to. Now, coming to your question, the first question you're asking, everywhere else in the country where there are responsible governments, such as the United States of America, where unemployment is already sitting at only 6%, a single digit, compared to our 4 or almost 50% of the population unemployed. When they got hit by the 2008 and 2009 world economic meltdown, and when they were hit by the COVID crisis in 2020, they did not employ the same instruments that the South African government and its Reserve Bank is currently undertaking, which is an austerity program, cutting expenditure, targeting a lower GDP debt ratio, and whilst tightening the noose on the economy through a very low inflation targeting regime of between 3 and 6%. What they did in the countries like in America is that they put on the table a real, meaningful intervention. And we have been arguing this point, they introduced a quantitative easing. They made money available to citizens of the country. They encourage an economic activity by ensuring that everybody can buy instead of squeezing those that have houses and that have cars and that have other goods through a higher interest rate regime. That's what they did. There was a real stimulus in the United States of America, and that's why their unemployment was at some point hitting below 6%. Look at us. With unemployment hovering around 50%, we are still obsessed with an inflation rate of 7.5%. The skies are falling. There's a rampant inflation trend. We've got to squeeze the consumer more. Unfortunately, the squeezing of the consumer more means that the poor, the middle class, who are already so indebted, will lose their homes, will lose their cars, will lose their goods, and the people who are moneyed, which are only 1% to 10% of the population, will continue to lie next to their pools, doing absolutely nothing, but earning 3-4% in real profit for their money that is idling in the bank. And so know that we are sitting with a massive crisis of underinvestment by those that have that money.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing your thoughts with us on the MPC decision to raise interest rates. Much appreciated. SAFTU's Secretary General Zwelinzima Vavi. We are chasing some news, breaking news. We will tell you a little bit more about it at a later stage. Now, while